Develop. Dr. Peter developed a new vaccine. Happen. Accidents will sometimes happen to the luckiest man. She happened to notice he was lying. Consider. They once considered his vaccine worthless. Spend. Most companies spend a lot of money advertising their products. Many countries spend a huge amount of money on weapons. Force. Children should not be forced to learn if they are not ready. Share. Olga and Betty shared a room for 3 years. Contain. Fruit contains natural sugar. This chapter contains 2 case studies of good essays. Express. She never expressed her personal thoughts. Include. The checklist includes 15 important rules. Other benefits of drinking tea includes more effective blood circulation. Perform. Scientists believe that robots can perform more complex tasks in the near future. Achieve. Among the top 5 countries, China achieved the largest increase in amount in this period. Require. A good speech requires several important elements. Encourage. It is important to encourage fathers to take a more active role in their children's lives. Attract. Every year, the city attracts many visitors. Lower prices are attractive to all buyers. Influence. He didn't influence others. He didn't have influence on others. Avoid. Most people would avoid such a bad person. Limit. These guidelines will limit employees' imagination. Seating is limited. Prefer. People prefer good listeners to good talkers. He prefers listening to speaking. Many young people prefer playing computer games. Cats prefer to be alone. Distinguish. This sensor can distinguish the weakest sound. Language distinguishes human beings from other animals. Face. He bravely faced the enemy. Consume. This engine consumes more fuel and produces more air pollution. Involve. This job involves risks. Reading comprehension involves one's knowledge of the world. Demand. We demand that our medicine, transportation, food, and everything else be 100% safe. As population increases, the world's demand for energy increases. Discuss. The issue has seldom been discussed openly. Notice. She noticed that she had lost her cell phone. She left without any notice. Exist. They exist for months or even years as seeds buried in the soil. Depress. Depression may result from the imbalance of 2 substances in the body. Bill grew up during a different time in U.S. history called the Great Depression. Prepare. He prepared a summary note. She prepared a summary note for the test. Deliver. The store will even deliver airplanes. Oppose. He thought nobody would oppose it, but she is strongly opposed to his ideas. This pen writes smoothly, as opposed to that one. Determine. Both differences and similarities in culture determine partners and enemies. They were determined to win the race. Transport. Buses and subways transport many people throughout the city. There are various types of transportation in this city. Injure. She was badly injured in the accident. Threaten. He threatened us with a gun. Viruses are a growing threat. Compare. They compared her work with his. We make comparisons, look for causes and effects, and predict what will happen in the future. Frighten. Thunder and lightning frighten animals. The boy was frightened at the wind. Suppose. Suppose that she is strongly opposed to your idea. The drug was supposed to release one's tension. Describe. There are about 150 words to describe a camel. Amaze. The audience was amazed. The sky was amazingly blue. Replace. He replaced all batteries at the same time. The cook replaced meat with fish. Explore. He discovered an island but did not explore it. He was a great explorer. Settle. Almost all of the Europeans settled along the northeast coast. Detect. This sensor can detect 5 different gases. Depend. Life is simple. Everything depends on your efforts. Confuse. We are often confused by abbreviations. As she is old, she frequently confuses Tom with his brother. Count. Every comment counts. His advice counts for nothing. Reveal. His paper revealed a surprising fact. Don't reveal that you have knowledge of that secret agreement. Escape. No prisoner has escaped from the island. Attempt. Next year, he will attempt to swim 500 kilometers in 100 days. Blame. They blamed him for the accident. They blamed the accident on him. He is to blame for the accident. Rely. He relies on his luck. It rests on whether he is imaginative or not. Alter. The storm altered its course and missed the coast. Many countries have invested heavily in the alternative energy. Disturb. This virus spread rapidly and then disturbs every system. Occupy. Is this seat occupied? No, it's vacant. 1/3 of the population finds its occupation in agriculture. The occupation of the town by German troops lasted for 3 months. Relieve. Medicine can relieve the symptoms of influenza. To my relief, the test was canceled. Lie. The answer lies in their eating habit. Anticipate. Most people anticipated a big dinner. Revolve. The earth revolves around the sun. Environmental. Environmental problems have harmful effects on our health and nature. Popular. Soccer is one of the most popular sports. Past. We learn from past experience. Individual. Our society emphasizes individuals' rights. Each individual has a unique set of genetic information. Positive. A positive attitude causes a positive reaction from others. Noisy. The room was quite noisy. Traditional. Over the past few years, marriage ceremonies have become less and less traditional. Nervous. He looked a bit nervous. Necessary. To avoid this misunderstanding, it's necessary to study the elements of culture. Negative. He never points out negative things. Immediate. We should take an immediate action to prevent any accidents. The oil caught fire immediately. Available. It is available here. I am available tomorrow. Essential. International cooperation is essential to keep the ocean clean. Huge. Canada is a huge country. Tiny. An insect is a tiny animal. Ashamed. You need not feel ashamed of making mistakes. Scared. He was terribly scared. Upset. Your lie always upsets me. I'm upset by the recent increase in the bus fare from $1 to $1.50. Embarrassing. A woman asked a few embarrassing questions. It made the speaker embarrassed. Explain to her how it embarrasses you when she tells others your problems. Relaxed. Getting a good sleep will help you feel relaxed. Attack. Tigers normally attack their prey from behind. Complain. Neighbors complained about the noise. Every customer complained about his rudeness. Significant. The taste of the wine was significant. Unique. A unique feature of water is that it expands when it changes from a liquid to a solid. Emotional. Gradually, he became more and more independent, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Boring. The movie is boring. Jack was bored by the movie. Mental. Reading involves a complex form of mental activity. Gloomy. She looks gloomy. Aware. Even when you're asleep, your brain is still aware of its surroundings. Arranged. His secretary arranged the meeting. Names are arranged in alphabetical order. Extraordinary. This is an extraordinary bird that makes long-distance journeys. Ordinary. We often hear stories of ordinary people who could have become great artists or scientists if education had focused on creativity. Conscious. Psychologists believe that understanding these unconscious motives is very important. Can she consciously read what others are saying unconsciously? Confident. They looked positive and confident. They want to hire employees who have confidence in the job they are doing. Strict. At that time, women were strictly prohibited from being admitted to those schools. Critical. It is very critical to follow these rules. Sufficient. They didn't have sufficient information. Dependent. He is completely dependent on the prejudices of his times. The new possibility is totally independent of the past results. Sudden. The flying objects suddenly disappeared. Trivial. It's not worth arguing over such a trivial thing. Compulsory. Every athlete must take compulsory drug tests. Dominant. The old castle stands in a dominant position above the town. Immense. During the war, a soldier found an immense statue in the Sahara. Experience. Experience is the best teacher. Walk. In any walk of life, there are difficult things. Difference. The Earth is different from other planets, and one of the most significant differences is the presence of its atmosphere. Attitude. It is easy to see others' bad attitude, but difficult to admit our own. Behavior. We should not criticize a person until we fully understand the cause of his or her behavior. Situation. In this situation, we must wait. Opportunity. The contest will be a great opportunity for everyone. Attention. They did not pay any attention to the environment. Research. A number of researches show that some vitamins are not good if taken too much. Matter. It doesn't matter whether it's hot or cold. Population. Europe and Africa make up 21.5% of the world's population. Conflict. Conflict is a part of all human relationships. Organization. Greenpeace is a non-profit organization. It works to protect the natural world. Crop. Rice is one of the most important food crops in Asia. Expense. Your expenses exceed your income. Rest. When he was 25, Rembrandt went to Amsterdam and lived there for the rest of his life. Delight. The farmer was delighted to see his old friend. Detail. When he visited new places, he wrote details about the weather and the geography. Impression. According to psychologists, one's physical appearance makes up 55% of first impression. The story is really impressive. Many French painters produced enormous quantities of impressionistic art, inspired by the characteristic images of natural objects. Equipment. Animals are equipped with peculiar senses. To climb this mountain, you must be in good health and have the right clothing and equipment. Advance. Scientists have made great advances in agricultural technology and greatly increased our food supply. As technology advances, computers become faster and faster. Generation. For generations, their family job was farming. Account. She opened an account and deposited $500. Response. From the day we are born, our bodies grow and change in response to our environment. Means. What is the most convenient means of communication? Passenger. A flight attendant's mistake made the passengers frightened. I was the only passenger on the plane. Infant. For the infant, crying helps to improve lung capacity and the breathing system. Material. Peru has many raw materials, but only a few factories can make use of them. Progress. Progress means moving forward or improving. He has made remarkable progress in his research. Explode. The gas tank exploded. The noise from the explosion surprised everybody in the middle of the night. Rush. Thousands of people rushed to California for gold. Contribute. They contributed to the development of up-to-date technology. Purchase. In this store, we can purchase new textbooks at low prices. For important purchases, it is often advisable to invest a bit more time. Urge. The teacher urged all students to read the reading assignment. Most people cannot resist the urge to drink a glass of beer when it is very hot. Absorb. If you do not absorb enough calcium from your food, your body will take it from your bones. Consist of A. Indonesia consists of more than 7,000 islands. Heal. Time heals all wounds. Expose. Expose your children to as many things, places, and people as possible. The color of the statue changed from long exposure to the sun. Afford. The school cannot afford to provide bilingual education because there are too many different languages. Assist. The government needs to assist the environmentally conscious companies. Recommend. He recommended a reliable car repair shop. Annoy. We all sometimes become annoyed and angry. Surround. When we are surrounded by only those who are positive, we become positive too. Obtain. In India, many people obtain their water from the river. Frustrate. She planned to cross the river alone, but was frustrated by bad weather. Establish. By 35, she had established herself as a writer. Aim. This plan aims to protect the Earth's resources. Insist. She insisted that he should be careful to avoid trouble. She insisted that he be careful to avoid trouble. The doctor recommended that he exercise every day. Provide. The company will provide necessary training. The company will provide you with necessary training. The company will provide necessary training to you. Encounter. As a foreign student, you may encounter language problems. Motivate. The accident motivated him to start his own business. Bother. Most of us are bothered by noisy cell phones. Acquire. Many children acquire imaginary friends and talk to them as if they were real. Convince. After only 1 week, Bill was convinced that he had made the right choice. Bury. According to this law, if a person found treasure buried under his land, it becomes his property. Hesitate. If the symptoms last longer than just a few minutes, don't hesitate to call for an ambulance. Conserve. Some oil was conserved for future use. Abuse. She abused her position and privileges. Indicate. When infants cry, it indicates that they are hungry or in pain. Every evidence indicates that he is guilty. State. He stated his name and address clearly. He is in a state of depression. The police suspected the truth of her statement. Shift. If you don't have a firm blueprint, your life goals will constantly shift from situation to situation. This simple shift in thinking made all the differences. Earn. The movie earned $57 million in a year. Delay. Drinking tea can delay the attack of cancer. Display. To help busy shoppers, large shopping malls display floor plans in many places. Authorize. He has the authority of the king. Dr. Smith is an authority on physics. Only authorized employees are allowed to enter this area. Distract. Their talking distracted me from concentrating. I hate to distract you from your work. Interrupt. Don't interrupt his concentration. There were no interruptions. Fold. They are easily folded and take up little space. The price of oil has increased twofold. Compromise. She compromised with her boss. They reached a satisfactory compromise. Lesson 3. Install. The observatory will install new telescopes. Possess. She possesses courage and leadership. The possession of language distinguishes human beings from other animals. Approve. The government doesn't approve of Dr. Kim's research plan. I don't approve of your plan. Distribute. Many publishers distribute their books directly to schools in their area. Irritate. Every morning, the birds irritated me. Everyone sometimes gets irritated, sad, depressed, and worried. Permit. The king permitted his exploration. Confirm. You have to confirm your reservation prior to 6 p.m. Decline. She declined their offer to sell her invention. The rise in prices caused a decline in consumption by 10%. Translate. His wife translated his books in English. Inherit. People inherit these two types of diseases. These two types of diseases are inherited. Interpret. No one could perfectly interpret his lecture. Her new interpretation of his theory generated hot discussion. Pollute. Our rivers become so polluted that we cannot even swim in them. His lecture deals with the pollution in the Amazon. Exhaust. The long travel exhausted her. Climbing a mountain is exhausting. David was exhausted after the soccer game. Prohibit. At that time, they strictly prohibited women from being admitted to scientific societies. They prohibited smoking in all buildings. Dwell. Birds dwell on trees. Don't dwell on your past experience. Interfere. She sometimes interferes. She sometimes interferes with my business. Divide. The book is divided into two parts. Adjust. Human body quickly adjusts to changes in temperature. Abandon. Unfortunately, an accident forced her to abandon her goal. Soak. No one can soak up knowledge like sponges. Lesson 4. Disguise. The millionaire disguised himself as a homeless man and met his old friend. Quote. Do you know why he quoted the sentence? Claim. She claimed that she was not guilty. Exclaim. She exclaimed, I can't believe it. Preserve. Salt is used to preserve food. Paralyze. An accident paralyzed the roads in a moment. Peter's legs were paralyzed. Emit. CO2 emissions from commercial and residential heating account for 12% of all CO2 emissions. Accompany. I accompanied my father. Litter. Do not litter. Stimulate. His speech failed to stimulate the audience. Restrict. This school strictly restricts the number of students in a class. Strive. The soldiers strive to keep their camp. Artists strive to improve their skill. Prosper. His shrimp business will prosper. Last. The war did not last very long. Submit. I want to submit my application tomorrow. Inquire. She called her friend and inquired about the test schedule. Arouse. Her impolite attitude aroused his anger. Commute. One of my friends commutes from Suwon to Seoul. Pursue. He decided to pursue what he wanted. Collapse. It is well known that periodic wind caused the Tacoma Bridge to collapse. Foster. The government amended the law to foster the growth of industries. Amend. This law has been amended 5 times. Accuse. The police accused him of robbery. Plead. Mr. Simpson employed a lawyer to plead his case. Exhibit. Last year she exhibited her paintings. Worship. Some tribes still worship the sun. Lesson 5. Convenient. In small cities, bicycles are more convenient than cars. Obvious. It is obvious to me that life is a lifelong learning process. Envious. She was envious of her friend's success. Reasonable. The prices are reasonable. Alert. Female babies make more noises, look at their parents, and remain alert longer. The firefighters were alert to possible dangers. Impatient. He was impatient at the delay. Grateful. We should be grateful that the earth is in just the right distance from the sun. Typical. This is a typical example of modern English usages. Rural. They suddenly decided to settle in a rural town. Admiring. I'm sitting in the yard and admiring the view over the wall. Everybody admired him because he was brave and dedicated. Urban. Urban problems are becoming an important issue in many developing countries. Enormous. There was enormous population growth in the 1960s. Extinct. The extinction of the dinosaurs occurred millions of years ago. Concrete. There was no concrete evidence. Intended. The lecture was intended to show how harmful fast food is to our health. I intended to explain something that he misunderstood. He intended to finish his term paper in 1 day, but actually it took him 3 days. Rare. White elephants are rare, even in Thailand. Patient. The wounded soldier was very patient. Diverse. He had diverse interests in psychology. The diversity of life forms on the earth makes zoology an interesting area of study. Regretful. He is deeply regretful for his mistake. Optimistic. Some people are pessimistic about the future, but a bright, optimistic attitude is attracting more and more people. Lesson 6. Clever. She is the cleverest student in this class. Tremendous. A little more patience will make a tremendous difference. Ethical. There are many ethical problems to be settled in modern biotechnology. Every religional ethic disapproves of suicide. Complicated. The problem was so complicated that no one could understand it. Selfish. I think it was a selfish behavior. Vital. The man said that the missing hard disk contained vital information related to national security. Intense. The king had an intense desire to live forever. Anxious. She looked anxious and worried. Many students are anxious about oral tests. Generous. He was generous and forgiving. She gave generous amounts of money to the homeless. Reliable. We need reliable co-workers. Distant. Argentina is a distant country. Artificial. They are assembling a new artificial satellite. Bilingual. Bilingual education is an unsettled issue. Dull. He considered the novel dull and boring. Abstract. His notes were full of abstract ideas about chemistry and physics. Predictable. The end of her stories were always predictable. Humble. The humble potato is one of nature's most precious gifts. Contemporary. Contemporary architecture makes very good use of space. Cervantes was a contemporary of Shakespeare. Misunderstand. Different cultural backgrounds can cause unexpected misunderstanding. Rude. Her rude manner annoyed us. Lesson 7. Mutual. Such agreement may come from mutual understanding. Ignorant. I was ignorant of the simple fact that water turns into ice at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Sociable. A dog is a sociable and emotional animal. Costly. It would be costly not to use language properly. Peculiar. These expressions are peculiar to English. This tradition is peculiar to Korea. Fundamental. Mr. Gibbs taught us fundamental writing processes, but I still don't understand them very well. Profitable. This trip will be the most profitable one in your life. Obsessed. He looked obsessed with the game. Consistent. Medical schools showed a consistently higher employment rate. Colonial. Throughout the colonial period, there was a marked shortage of horses. Inevitable. A long conflict was inevitable. Absolute. His parents have absolute trust in him. Awful. This cheese smells awful. Prominent. He is by far the most prominent surgeon. Superficial. He has nothing but a superficial knowledge of chemistry. Terrific. I have a terrific coach. Genuine. It's genuine whiskey. Aggressive. The enemy were very aggressive. Desperate. At that time, Carnegie was in a desperate state. Crucial. On second thought, he made a crucial decision. Like his father, he is very tall. Those gray dogs are like wolves. What are those gray dogs like? What is the weather like? Lesson 8. Violence. She was absolutely against any violence. The Smiths decided not to watch any violent films. Qualification. These are just basic qualifications. By offering higher salaries, the law office attracts highly qualified specialists. Evidence. Just one evidence suggests that he is guilty. Resident. This library is open to every resident. Lots of CO2 comes from commercial and residential heating. Concept. The concept of mathematics is abstract. Branch. Many banks are opening new branches in this city. Birds are singing on a large tree branch. Addiction. Many people suffer from addiction. Nicotine and caffeine are highly addictive. Resource. Trees and water are the most precious natural resources. Alarm. Certain African monkeys call an alarm when a dangerous enemy is near. We did not want to alarm you. We just wanted to tell you the news. Credit card misuse remains at an alarmingly high level. Judgment. Prejudice leads to all sorts of bad judgments. Status. His financial status doesn't allow him to buy a new car. Trait. The purpose of his study is to find traits that successful people have in common. Curiosity. To satisfy his scientific curiosity, he decided to make a microscope. Curiosity killed the cat. Facility. Funds were raised for school facilities. Duty. It is the duty of the police. He is off duty today. Infection. Computer viruses are infecting computers. Tribe. Some African tribes became extinct when they came into contact with European illnesses. Disadvantage. Every system has some disadvantages. He founded an organization for disadvantaged children. Decade. After a decade, he will be 27. Consequence. Unfortunately, we are not fully aware of the consequences of the decision. Lesson 9. Tendency. There is a tendency for women to live longer than men. Perspective. Father's advice gave me an opportunity to see myself from a different perspective. Candidate. All candidates have some knowledge of political issues. Evolution. Many of the things we see today developed through a long period of evolution. Worth. By 1922, the money wasn't even worth the paper of the same size. It isn't worth the expense to take extra vitamins. Prejudice. Prejudice leads to all sorts of bad judgments and conflicts. Ancestor. We incorrectly imagine that our ancestors inhabited an innocent and slow world. Management. We all agree that water resources require careful management. Conclusion. My conclusion was drawn from the following two facts. Human being. This vaccine has not been tested for human beings. Transformation. The river was lit up by those lamps, and the most fantastic transformation took place then. These stories were transformed into a poem by an unknown poet. Instinct. The animal found a shelter by instinct. Pronunciation. His Spanish pronunciation is terrible. Method. he invented his own method of cooking. Hardship. Everyone sometimes is faced with hardships. Glimpse. Glimpses of World History was written by Nehru when he was in prison. Nutrition. More than 500 million people suffer from serious malnutrition today. Reputation. He is a man of good reputation. Aspect. The committee discussed every aspect of the education system. Reign. During the reign of the Spanish, they lost their language. Refugee. The UN will set up 10 more refugee camps next month. Insight. His writings show deep insight into human history. Majority. He is just a minority. The majority is against his idea. Lesson 10. Mostly. It was mostly sunny. Fairly. It is fairly cheap. He treats all students as fairly as possible. Apparently. Apparently, he doesn't have any work experience. Apart. Apart from the humidity, the weather is not bad. The dormitory stood quite apart from the school. To fix the machine, you have to take it apart. Abroad. When she was a golfer, she frequently traveled abroad. Appropriately. Writers try to choose the most appropriate expression. Complete the sentences with the appropriate verbs. Nevertheless. Nevertheless, he made progress. Permanently. After this accident, he left his hometown permanently. Most of the loss in tropical forests will be permanent. Lesson 11. Once. I once saw him before. I once lived in London. Once he had learned basic skills, he started inventing his own method of rock climbing. Recently. Mr. Smith recently opened a steakhouse in Whistler, Canada. However, in the recent 20 years, the global warming trend has speeded up. Constantly. The number of visitors constantly increased. Yet. Dinner isn't ready yet. I rushed to the station, yet I missed the train. Properly. The car isn't working properly, so the mechanic must have repaired it incorrectly. Particularly. Your online security is particularly important to us. There were no particular topics. Extremely. It will be extremely difficult to make them react. Hardly. We can hardly expect to learn something without making any mistakes in the process. Lesson 12. Incredibly. Hope has an incredibly powerful force. It is an incredible story. Unnecessarily. The soup is unnecessarily salty. Barely. I can barely imagine life without rest or vacation. Frankly speaking, I'm tired of learning French. Inevitably. Inevitably, the virus was transferred to other computers. Chiefly. Houses are made chiefly of wood products. Corn is the chief crop of this region. Late. He is seldom late. Her latest movie opens soon. It was her last show in France. This book was completely revised lately. Despite differences in dress, language, and living conditions, people all over the world are very much the same. Simultaneously. They were learning 3 languages simultaneously. Conceal. The lawyer tried to conceal his secret. Investigate. NASA investigated the big face on Mars. Resemble. He resembles his grandfather. Modify. The car was modified for only 2 passengers. It is not a new model. It is nothing but a modification. Justify. The end can't justify the means. Imply. Some evidence implies that they stole Mrs. Hildebrand's diamond. Accumulate. We need to accumulate more experimental data to set up a theory. Induce. We could not induce him to concentrate on his work. Constitute. Automakers have found that women constitute a large portion of their consumers. Astonish. The results were astonishing. Corrupt. Populism and corrupt governments have caused poverty in Latin America. Offend. I'm sorry if I offended you. Abbreviate. To save time, we use abbreviations. Exert. The moon exerts a strong influence on the earth. Will you exert yourself a little more? Conform. Everyone must conform to the rules. Nourish. When mixed with milk, the fruit makes a nourishing food. Halt. It is well known that some herbs and garlic can halt the growth of cancer. Restrain. He couldn't restrain his temper. Dare. I have never dared do it. Comprehend. I can't comprehend how the dog could understand those words. Apprehend. In a few days, the police apprehended the thief. I could hardly apprehend the meaning of the sentence. There is growing apprehension that the storm will be much stronger than expected. Persuade. It is impossible to persuade him. Transit. This ship will transit the Panama Canal. Necessitate. His plan to attend the university necessitates lots of sacrifices. Enhance. The computer enhanced our productivity. Participate. Only 3 players participated in the tournament. Scatter. Farmers scatter seeds. Emerge. A beautiful goddess emerged from the lake. Enroll. She enrolled him on the waiting list. Retain. He retains a large ship. Prevail. The bacteria will prevail until an antibiotic is discovered. Inspire. Leonardo da Vinci was inspired by the writings of a Roman architect, Vitruvius. Confront. Some wild plants confront an uncertain future because of our indifference to and destruction of their natural habitats. She avoids confrontation with the witness. Deprive. The policeman deprived Bill of his driver's license. Bill was deprived of his driver's license. Deserve. I am sure you deserve the prize. Some people are doubtful whether he deserves to be so regarded. Dictate. Bill dictated a letter to his secretary. Forbid. Their religion forbids drinking. Schools forbid students to chew gum in the classroom. Refine. She can refine her skills for the next Olympic Games. Through many years of refinement, they finally completed the design of the new bridge. Witness. We witnessed their struggle, triumphs, and failures. Do you think the witness's statement is true? Dismiss. Bob started to make virus programs after he had been dismissed from the company. Dismay. We were all dismayed at his selfish attitude. Compel. We cannot compel you to resign, but you have to. Obstruct. A truck was obstructing the road. Resent. Soon, everybody began to resent his rude behavior. Reckon. I reckon that they will return by Wednesday. He reckoned 2 hours for the test. Nominate. She was nominated as the new chairperson. Prescribe. The doctor prescribed a medical drink. It tasted like a soft drink. Provoke. These works have provoked a lot of debates on what art gallery is. Ascribe. He ascribed his failure to bad luck. Suspend. The library will suspend its service for a week. Depict. His idea is clearly depicted in his essay. Inspect. This machine must be inspected every year for safety. Shrink. This shirt will not shrink in any case. Proceed. We couldn't proceed because of wind. His business is proceeding smoothly. Proceed. Nothing precedes health. There are no precedents for this case. Insure. Most companies provide health insurance for their employees. Classify. He classified his files by date. Withdraw. He suddenly withdrew his proposal. Defeat. He defeated his opponents one by one. Analyze. Scientists analyzed material samples taken from Mars. Thrive. Tiny organisms thrive in this river. The chef owns 3 thriving Italian restaurants. Thrift means not to waste time and money. They are rich, but still thrifty. Indecisive. He is indecisive to be a leader. Vague. A vague voice asking for help came out of the dark. Overdue. However, he didn't know his appointment was overdue. Adolescent. Children from ages 13 to 19 are adolescents. Stubborn. He had a very stubborn belief. Obedient. Dogs are faithful and obedient. Reluctant. James reluctantly accepted the offer. Irresistible. He felt an irresistible urge to buy the painting. Persistent. Last night, there were persistent attacks from the enemy. Prone. She is prone to sickness. Man is prone to make a mistake. Vicious. There was a vicious fight between 2 cats in the street. Rewarding. He doesn't think teaching is a rewarding job. Persuasive. His speaking was formal and persuasive. Devastating. He concentrated on his study even when so many things in his life seemed devastating. Illogical. People sometimes become quite illogical. Durable. Furthermore, these batteries are more durable, economical, and environment-friendly. Restless. After she had lost her passport, she became restless and impatient. Reckless. The accident was caused by a reckless driver. Priceless. He used to give us priceless information. Timeless. Proverbs provide us with timeless wisdom, advice, warning, and encouragement. Skeptical. He is skeptical about the news that a man invented a time machine. Deliberate. She is telling a deliberate lie. Formal. He didn't get any formal education. Mighty. The tornado was so mighty that we had to escape from the town. Concise. The report was clear and concise. Versatile. He is versatile enough to be able to play in 5 positions. Barren. The town was just a barren desert when they first came. Sophisticated. She looks intelligent and sophisticated. Computers are getting more sophisticated. Indispensable. Emergency food and fuel are indispensable in this trip. Arbitrary. She sometimes makes an arbitrary decision. Transparent. Glass and water are transparent. Epidemic. Cholera is an epidemic disease. Prudent. He read the contract very carefully 3 times. He must be a prudent person. Confidential. He said the documents were confidential. Abrupt. There was an abrupt change in the weather. Unfavorable. All conditions are unfavorable for this exploration. Disruptive. Everyone felt his unnecessary questions were disruptive. Adverse. Due to adverse weather conditions, they stopped sailing. Sometimes exactness adversely affects one's impression. Worthwhile. It was worthwhile waiting 10 hours in line for the tickets. Ambiguous. His message was so ambiguous that we couldn't understand it. Delicate. At that time, she was in a very delicate state. Rebellious. The French are a little rebellious people. Relevant. I don't think his suggestion is perfectly relevant to this matter. Spontaneous. No one forced them to help you. Their help was spontaneous. Passive. Don't be a passive observer of your life. Principal. The Seine is one of the principal rivers of France. Abundant. Mexico is abundant in silver. Adequate. Most plants need adequate amount of water and light. Distinct. Everyone could see distinct differences between the 2 samples. Conventional. He ignored conventional wisdom and finally failed. Unique. Everyone has unique fingerprints. External. This drug is for external use only. Enthusiastic. She is enthusiastic for jazz. Hazardous. He handles hazardous materials every day. Awkward. There was an awkward smile on his face. Lesson 7. Sociologists. Sociologists study societies and how they are organized. Relaxation. His doctor emphasized the importance of relaxation. Criterion. The essays were then evaluated according to the criteria of originality. Drought. In 1988, the United States suffered one of the worst droughts in history. Conscience. I know from my experience that if I lied against my conscience, I would feel uncomfortable for a long time. Eruption. Natural disasters, such as volcanic eruptions, fires, floods, and hurricanes happen every year, somewhere in the world. Proportion. Water covers a large proportion of the Earth's surface. Inflation. After Germany lost World War I, inflation ruined its economy. Virtue. Wisdom is knowing what to do next, and virtue is doing it. Obligation. She is helping them, simply out of a feeling of obligation. We were obliged to attend the short course. Trade-off. Even in everyday life, trade-offs are unavoidable. Famine. The long drought was followed by months of severe famine. Incident. An unexpected incident may always take place. Territory. You are entering enemy's territory. We have covered a lot of territory today. The rest is his territory. Category. They even put Picasso in the same category as Mozart. In his study, William Golding divided people into 3 categories in an effort to define human intelligence. Side effect. What are the side effects of these drugs? Surgeon. The surgeons in this hospital are not kind. Compensation. If you do something wrong, you must accept errors frankly and make compensation. Scarcity. There was a scarcity of food and water, and it forced the inhabitants to leave. Water is very scarce in dry areas. Compulsion. I felt a compulsion to drink something sweet. They are reading it under compulsion. Descendant. He says that we should keep the earth clean for our descendants. Plague. Money plagued their conscience. Much of the culture of Alaska's natives disappeared to the Great Plagues prior to the 1950s. Assimilation. Cultural assimilation occurs when 2 different cultures meet. Justice. When I was young, I thought nothing could precede justice. Proficiency. Many jobs require specialized skills such as proficiency in mathematics or foreign languages. Advent. With the advent of computers, many things have become easier and faster. Boundary. The boundary between those 2 countries became unclear. Emphasis. An increasing emphasis on the value of time is changing consumers' behavior. He emphasizes imagination. The importance of experiment cannot be overemphasized. Right. Everyone has the right to vote. Your assumption is right. Help her right now.
Defect. The company lost its reputation by some defects in its products. Notion. His conclusion is based on the notion that all human beings are born equal. Hostile. He is hostile to strangers. Biased. We need an unbiased advice. Define. What is the definition of mathematical probability? Assign. The manager assigned us tough jobs. Recognize. At first, I couldn't recognize her face. Some teachers began to recognize students' individuality. Transmit. The flying object transmitted a blue light. Reflect. These surfaces do not reflect sound. Perceive. The man perceived someone was checking his emails. Reconcile. No one could reconcile the opposing parties. Conduct. The company conducts surveys periodically. Overwhelm. An overwhelming majority is against the proposal. Elaborate. It was a very elaborate design.